Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2020 Nissan Pathfinder. There's a few different options when it comes to hitches for the Pathfinder that you can pick from. There's a CURT that's very similar to this that has a gloss black finish, but it's going to look pretty well identical to the finished product. There's a Draw-Tite that has a small portion that you'll be able to see. And then there's a Hidden Hitch option, which they're not necessarily my favorite one. The mechanism is just not something that I'd see myself using too often. So this one fits the bill because it is a hidden cross tube, but mainly I like this because of the matte black powder coat finish. Dealing with a lot of different hitches, I found that this one holds up way better to chips, scratches, and it hides them, and it really just doesn't get chipped or scratched as easily. Another good portion too is it does kind of blend in with the plastics on the vehicle. I think it's a little stealthier look, and overall just doesn't take away from the OEM cleanness from previously not having the hitch on. So there's lots of choices. Hopefully you go along with this one. I think you'll be a lot happier with that finish long term. Now this hitch is a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, and that's going to be the standard for a lot of different accessories. So if you're looking at a cargo carrier, a bike rack, or a ball mount, this is going to be a great size. And all of those accessories are going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip. This is not included with the hitch. Most of the times when you pick up those accessories, they'll have those included. But something that you might want to consider is if you do plan on leaving the accessories on the back of the vehicle, a locking pin and clip will give you peace of mind knowing that no one's going to just walk by and take those accessories. If you plan on pulling a trailer, you have rolled style safety chain loops that are nice and open, super easy to get your standard S-hooks, or even a larger clevis style goes on with no issue. Speaking of towing, if you plan on towing a trailer, you are going to want to adhere to the weight capacities of not only the hitch, but also what the vehicle's owner's manual will say, and take the lower number. This is actually a pretty good weight capacity. It's coming in at 6,000 pounds for your gross trailer weight rating, which is the weight of the trailer, plus the accessories loaded onto it. The tongue weight rating is very exceptional. It is 900 pounds. So with that, you can get a 4-bike bike rack completely loaded up or a cargo carrier loaded up. I really don't see any chances of you overloading that. But again, check your owner's manual. Make sure that you're not going to put any damage on your vehicle by trying to haul something that might be a little bit more than the vehicle's capable of. When choosing accessories that fold up, whether it be a bike rack or cargo carrier, you want to make sure that it's able to actually stow in that position. So measuring from the center of the hitch pin hole to the furthest point of our rear bumper, it's going to be 3.5 inches. So I really don't worry too much that you're going to have issues making contact with your fascia. Just keep in mind, more than likely, you're probably not going to be able to open up your rear hatch when those are in that stowed position. As far as ground clearance goes, this one's fairly good, coming in at 13 inches from the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground. And that's going to be important for choosing accessories that give you a little bit of extra ground clearance, but you should be okay with that height. It's more so used for determining which ball mount, rise or drop you may need. So you can measure from the ground to the coupler of your trailer and compare that with the 13 inches and determine the rise or drop necessary to be able to get that proper ball mount. Something else you're going to want to keep in mind when you have suspended accessories like cargo carriers or bike racks on your vehicle, they extend the length of the vehicle. So as you go up steep inclines or over large bumps, those have a tendency to tilt towards the ground and can make contact. 13 inches should get you to where you should be all right, but on real steep inclines, definitely keep that in mind when you have them loaded. So a great hitch overall, and in terms of installation, this one's actually pretty easy to do. You are going to be removing your factory tow hook, which you will not be using, but your safety chains will become that new tow hook if you ever need it. But really it just bolts up into the frame rail using weld nuts that are already there. They can get a little corrosion, but nothing too bad normally, and you're going to be removing some brackets. So pretty easy. I do recommend having an extra set of hands to be able to get this up in place. But if this is something that maybe you don't have the place to do it, the tools to do it, or even the want to do it, you can use our dealer locator to find someone close to you to get it installed. But for you DIYers that are doing this on your own in your driveway or garage, follow along and I'll show you how to get your hitch installed. To begin our installation, we are going to need to lower down our spare tire, and that's going to give us the space to put our hitch in place. And if you've never lowered your spare tire on your Pathfinder, it's actually very easy. You'll just open up your hatch and peel back your cargo cover, and in this spot where we have this kind of storage bin, you're going to find that there's a cap. You'll just twist this counterclockwise and pull that out. And that's going to expose the 21 millimeter bolt head that's going to allow us to lower it down. Now, if you don't have a 21 millimeter socket, you can actually use the tire wrench that's included in your vehicle to be able to lower it down. But similar concept, we'll just lower this to where we can get our spare tire moved out of the way. Now, once you're ready to take the tire off, you may have a safety loop that you'll need to unhook. Ours today is just kind of zip tied up there. So the same process to get this away from the tire. You'll just get some tension taken off and then put that bracket through. And then we'll set this aside. We're going to be removing our tow hook that's on the driver's side, and it's attached to the frame rail with 2 bolts that go vertically, and then there's 2 on the frame rail that go horizontally. They're all going to be an 18 millimeter socket to get these taken down. So we'll get this removed. Once you have your tow hook removed, this will not be going back on the vehicle, and we will not be reusing that hardware. So you can hold on to this if you want, but just know it will not be going back in place. We're going to find that we have 2 brackets that attach from the bumper beam to the bottom portion of the fascia, and the hitch is going to live in this area, so we do need to remove both of them. And to do that, there's a plastic push pin on the bottom. If you just use a flathead screwdriver and put it in the slotted end, just give it a twist. Try to get that center portion to open up, and then you can normally get the entire push pin out. Just make sure you hold on to both pieces. We will be using this for reinstallation. The same goes for the bolt that's running into the bumper beam. That's going to require a 12 millimeter socket to get that taken out. And we're just going to set all of these aside as we'll put them back up once the hitch is installed. The next step is going to be trimming out this portion of the fascia, and this is just going to allow that hitch to slide in place and make clearance for it. So it's imperative that we do that before raising the hitch up. And I use the measurements in the instruction manual and painter's tape to just guide us along here to get some nice clean cuts. We can always trim off a little bit more later, so I would recommend starting with this, and then you can always cut a little bit more later if you need to. To get this trimmed out, I use an oscillating tool. You can use a Dremel. You can really use anything to cut through this plastic, because we're going to come back and get the burrs knocked down. And once that's trimmed out, you can let that plastic cool a little bit. We'll just take a file, or just you can use a box cutter or a back end of a knife blade to just knock those burrs down. Before we get our hitch raised in position, we do want to make sure that the bolts are going to be able to thread into the weld nuts. And the ones we're going to be using are closest to the inside of the frame rail. You'll find one here, and then these 2. So what I recommend doing is grab the hardware from your hitch and see if you can't thread that in by hand. If you're getting a lot of resistance, chances are there's some buildup of rust and corrosion, and that can be a little bit tricky when you're holding the hitch up to get it started. So this is definitely helpful before getting the hitch up, and if it is corroded, there's a few different ways that you can clear that out to make it easier. And to clear it out, normally a little bit of penetrating oil and a toothbrush to clean those out will be enough. If it's real severe, you may end up needing to use a tap to clear them out. Depends on what kind of environment your vehicle's in and mileage. Ours today seems perfectly fine, so we're good to get our hitch up in position. I do recommend having an extra set of hands for that. I got Ryan here helping me get the hitch up, and we have 1 bolt and a conical tooth washer ready to go. And our goal is to get one started on each side to support the hitch, and then we can get the rest of the hardware in. It's very imperative that you have the teeth on the conical tooth washer biting into the metal. So just make sure you have it in that orientation. And when raising up, I would, on the passenger side, slide it up over the exhaust. This should kind of sit in the portion that we trimmed out. And then once you get the hole aligned, or at least one of the holes aligned, you can go ahead and get that hardware started. I threaded in the rest of the hardware by hand, and we're going to snug it up using a 19 millimeter socket. You don't have to get crazy here because we're going to come back with a torque wrench. And on the passenger side, you'll find that the muffler's kind of in the way, but you do have enough flex with the rubber isolator to move that out and be able to get this with an extension. So snug everything down. Using the torque settings found in the instruction manual, we'll come back with that same 19mm socket and a torque wrench and torque these all down properly. This is an important step because you obviously want it tight enough for the hitch to stay in place, but with weld nuts, you can over tighten them and that can cause damage. So if you need a torque wrench, we have them available here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free, but we're gonna go through, get these all torqued down properly. Now we've officially installed our hitch, but we do need to get our brackets put back in place, and something that I ran into when trying to put the plastic push pins in, I wasn't able to press it up, and that's because the gap here where the hitch sits, it's just a little bit too short for the plastic push pin to work. So I just trimmed off the last little outer edge of it, and that's going to give us that clearance to get this put back in place. Now all we need to do is get our spare tire up, and then we're good to go. With our spare tire raised up in place, there's no clearance issues there, so everything works just like you would from the factory, but now you have your hitch. So all that's left to do is load up your accessories, put in your pin and clip, and hit the road. So that's going to do it for a look and installation of the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2020 Nissan Pathfinder.